Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Carmela's Wrestling Radio Relived. Here's my baby girl Jeannie. How you doing, honey?
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah. I know
I'm
you have.
okay. No, tired. Phillies lost, they're out. Eagles lost to a horrible team, but they played horrible, so they deserve to lose and just aggravating and frustrating and. But
Are they
anyway,
are they playing this weekend?
they already played. They played yesterday.
Wait a minute. No, don't they usually play on Sunday? The Eagles,
Yes.
but they're not playing
But
again on
there's
Sunday.
no.
Well, I don't know. You say that like
They
I
played
know,
this past Sunday, and
right?
then the games are usually there's the start of the week, football week is on Thursday night, then
Okay.
Sunday, then Monday. So there's 3 days out of the week that NFL plays a game. This
Okay.
week happened to be Thursday night, which was last night. So
So the Eagles don't play anymore now till when?
not this Sunday, but the following Sunday.
Okay. All right. You got to explain that stuff to me, Jeannie. I don't follow it like you do. Okay. Also, we have some cool stuff coming up. We are going to do some little bit of a couple different things. We're going to do a couple of tributes. We're going to do a Bruno San Martino tribute. We're going to do an Andre the Giant tribute. We're going to do a couple of those. And want you to keep in touch for that kind of stuff. In the meantime, we have an awesome show for you today. This is
Yes.
Susan Green part two. If any of you remember, part one was a little crazy. But it was phenomenal. This lady,
Yeah.
man, I tell you, she rocks. She really does. And I told her, I said, I said, I have very, very, very few heroes. I said, believe me. I said, but you're jumping right up there now. I said, because this lady, man, she's awesome and she don't take any crap and she is who she is and she doesn't apologize for it. And I love that in a person. I
Yes.
really do. So we're going to bring her on and everybody just sit tight because it's going to be a good show. Susan, hi.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good. How
Thank
are
you.
you?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. It's so good to have you back again.
Yes.
We want to tell you that we're sorry again for the passing of your little kitty. I'm so sorry. Um,
Yeah,
that
it
was
was I'm in a better place. I mean, but she was my heart for a while.
oh, I'm so sorry. So was she elderly or was she sick or
No, no, well, she was better way. I was rescued. She was probably ancestor. She was born without eyes, and
oh
so it was. My vet sat there and said she wasn't going to live very long, and I sat there and said, but I had her for 5 years, so that's 5 years that
wow.
I had her.
God bless. That's wonderful. And I saw on Facebook you have a couple of other ones too, right?
Oh yeah, short legs just had a battle.
Short legs.
Yeah, well, it's little legs. They're triplets. I got Grayson and Kissy and short legs, but short legs
Oh.
it got short legs. Uh, but they look like triplets. And then she had to have three blood transfusions, but she got over it and she's back. So
Wow. Wow. So you're one of those people that you read about, that takes homeless animals and animals that are handicapped and animals that are in danger and need love
yeah,
and need compassion and need somebody. And you're like, the more I talk to you, the more I realize how awesome a woman you really are. That's incredible. Um, but without any further ado, let's get to talking about some more of this Moolah stuff, okay? Um,
okay.
I watched The Dark Side of the Ring with the Fabulous Moolah, and wow, okay, it
Yeah,
resonated so powerfully with what you had told us on the last show. All right,
yeah,
um, I had said that at the end of that show, and I guess this goes with everything; it's everywhere. There were a couple of female wrestlers on it that said that that's not true. Moolah was never mean. Moolah never did anything bad to them or anybody else. She was tough when it came to wrestling, but she was like everybody's mom, and she this and she that. What do you have to say about that when you hear stuff like that?
Uh, when I worked for her, and what's funny, a lot of people think that I wrestled her so much. In 9 years, I probably wrestled her 30 times.
Hmm.
Because uh, she's we respected each other. We didn't care for each other. You know, uh,
Okay.
but it. she got me in the ring when I needed to wrestle and got my name out there, and I got in magazines and I got big shows, and whenever I went independent, I was able to. She had made my name, so I was able to carry on. Uh,
Okay.
with a lot of girls that are re, re retelling their stories, when they tell me the story, when they were there in the 80s and 90s, Moolah was absolutely horrible. Now I was there from 71 to 79.
Hmm.
And I left when my neck and back was broke, and she thought that was the greatest thing that ever happened. And I said, I will be back. Not to wrestle with her or for her, but
Hmm.
a broke neck and back wasn't going to keep me out of the ring because that was my passion.
Right.
Uh, but Richter, Wendy is probably one of the ones that never backs down from what she said. Moolah was what she was. And uh, when I went there, we signed contract, and it was that she got 30% off the top of every penny that she had us booked for. Uh, I can't, I can't argue that she took all my money because I signed the contract.
Right.
That's what she got. If you made $25 and she got her 750, and you hoped you had enough money to get a McDonald's, you
Oh my
know,
God.
you know.
That's
But
crazy.
yeah, but I've seen an interview from Judy Martin where she absolutely despised the ground Moolah walked on, and then when they had a uh, second thought, she said how wonderful Moolah was and was doing
Yeah.
all the crying, but when you sit there and think you're going to get on the air or on a podcast, and you start rethinking what you said, that make you more popular. And as I'm going to say what I say, and I won't back down. Like
Good.
me or don't like me.
Right. And that's why you're here. That's why you're here, because you tell the
Yeah.
truth and you're honest with everything. Now, Wendy, she did say exactly what you said. She really, really got screwed with Moolah when she came in and she was the spider lady and all that stuff. And
Oh yeah.
Moolah and Vince really screwed her over for that match, big time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, and you know what? You hear stuff that they said that Wendy was just too big for her britches. Wendy was obnoxious. Wendy was, hitting the ceiling too much. But I can't picture Wendy being that kind of person. She just strikes me as a kind person. Is that how you see her?
She is a kind person in a point of view, and then when it comes to wrestling, here lately she's got to where she sits there and says that she can make money by selling her pictures and stuff. But when she left Moolah, she gave, I think she sits there and said she gave all of her wrestling paraphernalia to a Goodwill. I mean, she had the chaps and the hats, and then
Hmm.
the Cindy Laupner, the rock and roll thing.
Yeah.
That she just didn't. She despised wrestling, and it took probably 10 or 15 years for her to realize that there was a lot of us people out there that were okay. Uh,
Hmm.
but a lot of the girls that came in the 80s, they weren't coming because they loved wrestling. And I can sit there and say the girls in today's wrestling, they got to be gymnastics. They're there for the money. That
Right.
they saw Vince doing WrestleMania and getting all the Raws and everything, and they saw bills behind it. Where people like me and Tony Rose, it was because we wanted the sport. We
Right.
wanted to be able to see the world, and I said we didn't care if we got $5 in our pocket, but we got to go to Hawaii or we got to go to Australia because we were wrestling for $200 a week.
Wow.
You
That's
know, and
crazy.
yeah, and we were some places overseas they did pay the motel, but something like Japan and Australia.
Hmm.
But there's some places that $200 a week, we still had to be able to pay for a motel. You
And
know,
eat. And
yeah,
eat and gas.
and
That's
eat,
ridiculous.
yeah,
Yeah, you
you know,
can't do that. That's
yeah.
ridiculous. But
That-
we also I also saw on that program the stuff about sweet brown sugar,
oh yeah,
and that was horrible, horrific. Okay. And again, that resonated with everything you told us. So it tends to
yeah,
make me believe you over and above whatever else I hear,
yeah.
and now the one husband was Buddy somebody, Buddy.
Buddy Lee.
He was not a
Talk,
nice man at all.
oh no, I wasn't there with him. I will try to get you in touch with Tony Rose. She was there in the early '60s up to
Right.
1980 when she retired. She never lived on the compound. She lived over off of where Buddy Lee and Mula actually trained off of Percival, which was over in the Rosewood area.
Right.
Uh, and she can tell you more on that. I know where the house was and all because they had two houses side by side,
Hmm.
uh, and all. But Tony Rose was in that era with Buddy Lee and everything, and I came right after whenever she'd bought the, as I call it, the compound, because she treated
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
We were there to entertain her and work for her for nothing, and then wrestle for her, and her get up the rest of our money.
That's
Yeah,
ridiculous. That's
yeah.
crazy. So tell us a little bit more about your career from when you were leaving the Mula thing, because we talked about Mula, and again, a lot of her stuff was reprehensible. It was awful. It was horrible. She definitely wanted you guys to sleep with promoters and stuff so that you guys supposedly would get ahead. I saw that on the program as well. Did she ever want you to do that?
That came in the '80s. With us, we weren't really allowed to talk. She didn't want us to talk to the guys. She didn't want us to even know the promoters. And I sat there and said, for the longest time, uh, I didn't know some of the promoters until I started doing independent in '82 after my neck and
Hmm.
back, retired. But I said originally, when I left her, she'd call my parents, and on my personal life, and of course, I'd come up to my Baptist preacher when I was 11 years old, and I'd came out to my parents when I was 14, and she called my parents, and I sit there and said back then I was gay, you
Hmm.
know. Well, she called my mother and sit there, and back in the '60s and early '70s, you didn't say gay. The going word, and forgive me, I wouldn't dare say, but she told my mother that I was queer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the process of that, I called my mother and I said, "What's wrong?" And she started talking, and I went down and I told Lily, and I said, I got to go home. My mother's received a phone call and I got to go. Never telling her that my mother told her that she called her and told her that I was queer.
Hmm.
And of course,
But
I'd already came out to my parents.
right, so they already knew. So that
Yeah,
was like no. But did
yeah,
Mula ever find out that they already knew?
yeah. But I went home because my mother thought, and why she thought, I don't know, if she thought that I had a neon sign over my head sitting there saying what my personal life was.
Right.
And,
Right.
and whenever I got back home, and I thought, well, I'm gonna sit there and show them. Well, I started driving a tractor trailer, and that's when I met Mildred Burke when I was delivering paint out in San Diego. I called her there in Los Angeles and said, who I was, and she said, "Aren't you one of Mula's girls?" And I said, "Well, I was, but I'm not. I'm out here driving a tractor trailer and delivering battleship grade at the naval station in San Diego." Well, she had come pick me up, and then we talked because I had a 2-day layover over there, and we discussed about me being able to do some bookings for her. And
Wow.
I couldn't do the months or the 3 months in Japan, but I she actually got in the ring and grappled with me, Mildred. She
Wow.
went months, but she got in there, and we showed the girls and guys that she had that, because I could grapple, I mean, I could wrestle. And I sit there and said, I said, well, you can throw me and we'll go from there. And it was like, all right. But I said, when it would get down uh, to the mat and be grappling, and I'd be sitting there telling her, not to break my arm, we was just trying to show them how to do it because Mildred was a tough old codger, you know. You
Yeah.
and,
She was an icon. She really
oh,
was.
oh, yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff about her.
Oh,
They
yeah.
even just did a movie about her. As a matter of fact, the movie that they did about her also had a AEW wrestler named Tony Storm in it.
Yeah.
And she has a really good reputation. But what was the difference working with Mildred Burke as opposed to the Moolah?
Mildred made me money. But once again, I could only go to Japan and Mexico, but I would only go in for 1 or 2 days, and
Yeah.
Mildred actually put her NWA world belt on me when I'd go over there, and they'd say, "Well, you're going to drop it," and I said, "No, I'm not. If you can take it, take it." But I sit there and said, Mildred didn't give me anything, and I said, this is an NWA belt. It's got to come from Sam Muchnick, the president. If an NWA belt gets dropped, from one title holder to the next, and a couple of the girls would try to take it, and they wouldn't win. They just got hurt. And
Well, let me
uh,
let me ask you a question real quick. I don't mean to interrupt you, but every time I think of it, I got to say it. Uh, the wrestling matches from back then, as well as now, were predetermined. They were always predetermined. But when you say that, when they said you're going to drop the belt, and you're like, "No, I'm not." Okay, did you actually have the authority to say that? Like, did you actually, when you said you're not dropping it, they can try to take it, but if they can't, they can't. Did that have any repercussions? I mean, were you allowed to do that?
I was allowed to do it because that was the NWA belt, and it was Mildred's and the NWA. Sam Muchnick, he was the president. He's the one that ordered everything. And Mildred and him discussed her putting her belt on me,
Hmm.
and representing it in Japan and Mexico. And of course, they'd always throw it back. Well, Moolah does. And I sit there and look at her belt. It just says world champion. And women's world champion. And I said, it's got her name and date that she won it in Baltimore, Maryland. And I think it was in 1956. I want to say
Yeah,
March 1956, somewhere around there. And I said, this says MWA women's world champion. It does not say nothing about the fabulous Moolah, you know. And
wow.
they'd sit there and say, and I said, you can try to take it, but you're going to have to fight, because I'm not dropping it.
Wow.
I can call Mildred, or we can call Mildred and Snam, and we can discuss the matter. But I've got one match over here, and y'all can't drop it back. You know, uh,
That's right. That's
and
right. They
and
couldn't.
but I had a Mula was basically the only one that I ever had to shoot on, and shooting um, means I beat her. She and the 70s, I think 75, January 11th, or January 8th of 75.
Okay.
Uh, when you had to say I give up. You couldn't tap the mat. You
Oh,
tap it.
okay.
Well, that came into 2000, tapping out. Well, she actually had to say I quit.
Okay.
Whenever I beat her there in Dallas, Texas, and I sit there and said we had a sellout crowd of 3,000 people, but that's and I made $150 there, but of course she got her 30% of that 150, but she didn't show up for the rest of the week. Where Sam Mushnick had sat there, and whenever Fritz von Erich called and said she took it, or that I took her belt, and he started discussing, and then finally he sat there and said, "Her belt's got nothing to do with me. Just it was Moolah's belt. She had to figure out a way to get it back." Well, that's when Vince flew me to Connecticut to see what it was going to take for me to give her belt back. And
Wow.
I said, magic word was give, because she couldn't beat me. You
So
know,
you had to hand
uh,
it to her?
I gave her in the Madison Square Garden. I was wrestling Paula Kay. Uh, I think it was 4 or 5 months after. It was like April or May of '75, and I got a picture of me handing her the belt back in Madison Square Garden
I've seen that
in the,
picture.
in the dressing room.
Now,
Uh,
what did they use as? I mean, did they say anything publicly, like an excuse of, Susan Green isn't going to wrestle anymore because, or she has to give the belt back because, whatever? Like, or did they just do it behind the scenes?
it was behind the scene. She still had to book me. That was one of the things I put in the contract. She couldn't just drop me because I beat her,
Hmm.
but I never had to wrestle her again. That was another. And so when people see me that I've wrestled her after 75, I said, look at the crowd, look at my jacket. I said, jacket, all right, but I said at one point I was, look at my hats. I wore normally I wore the blue hat, but I did have a red and white straw hat that I wore in a
Hmm.
couple of matches, and I sat there and said, and I said, my boots, I changed, from the inside lace up to the Western boot that was red, white, and blue, and to a solid white boot. And I said, I've got the same boots on. And they were the ones that laced up on the inside. They were red, white, and blue. But,
Yeah.
and I said, so it was the same match. And I said, when I beat her in Dallas, I had the Western boots that were red, white, and blue. But I said, after that, I didn't wrestle her anymore. So But
Did you
everyone
ever
said,
have
"Well,
any more interactions with her after that at all?
she was running a show at Fort Jackson, and she had Donna Christiantello and Leilani Kai on it. And she had asked me, and I sit there and said, I'll come out and wrestle for you, but I want $150, and I want my envelope with my money in it before I get dressed.
Good for you. Good
And
for
so
you.
I was sitting in the dressing room, and she wasn't coming around. And I sit there and said, I need my envelope, and she finally threw it at me, and I checked it, and I stuck it down in my boot and my sock when I started getting changed to where she couldn't. And I left all my other ID in my car because it was in Fort Jackson, and I knew one of
Wow.
the MPs. And I said there, I said, I'm leaving my ID and stuff. And he says, I'll keep watch on your car. And I said, thank you very much. And
Do you think she would have tried to take it back?
oh, she'd have took my money in a heartbeat. She'd have took my ID in a heartbeat if she could have got
Wow.
it.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah, but
Wow.
whenever I started getting dressed for that match, we're at Fort Jackson. I wore red, white, and blue since 1970 when I was still in high school.
Right.
And she sat there, and I started getting dressed, and she says, well, you can't heal with that color, because she wanted to be a wrestler. And I said, well, I can't wrestle you. We got a contract. Well, of course, Donna Christiantello's looking like, what the hell are you talking about? And Leilani Kai's looking at me like, what the hell are you talking about? Because nobody knew about this contract. It
Right.
had to stay between me, her, and Vince and the
Oh,
paralegals.
okay.
So they never knew. And she actually threw me off the property, and I had
Wow.
to, but she still had to book me. So I said it was cheaper for me living off the property, not there on
Mhm.
the compound, because I didn't have to worry about all the damn two-a-days and training the new girls. I was able to
Yeah.
do what I wanted to do, and
Right.
but she'd drop off the new girls at a 7-Eleven on Percival Road, and I would swing by there, and I'd say, well, I'm just passing through, and I'd see him stand there with the suitcase, so I knew it was one I was supposed to pick up, and we'd go wrestle the town, and I'd sit there and tell him, she said, well, and I was supposed to drop him back off at this 7-Eleven that
Mhm.
about a mile and a half from the compound. And I thought, she expects y'all to walk at 3 o'clock in the morning through this neighborhood
Wow.
all the way back. And I said, and I thought, I know a back way in to get to I'll cut my lights off and get you closer to where you don't have to walk so far, because Moo wouldn't come pick these girls up at this 7-Eleven, whenever
That's
we finished the damn match.
crazy.
Yeah.
And it's funny to hear her daughter talk. Her daughter was on that dark side of the ring too. To hear her daughter talk, she was like the best mom in the world. And I mean, maybe she treated her daughter differently. I don't know, but her daughter was like, "Oh my god!" And then Leilani Kai, you brought her name up. She was going to do my podcast. Okay. Even
Yeah.
before I tried to get a hold of you, but she was going to do it. And then apparently Vince signed her to a contract, an ambassador kind of thing, or the
Legend. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
she said, I don't think I can do it now because I'm licensed and blah blah blah. But I see that she's done other ones. So
Yeah.
she was also one of the ones that said that Moolah never did anything wrong. She never saw any of that.
Leilani Kai was treated like a piece of dirt.
Really?
I picked her up in Augusta, Georgia, when I wrestled there. I was wrestling in Casey, and I was trying to tell Tora Tanaka, don't let her come here. She don't want to be here. And it's like, well, and it was after I'd already beat Moolah.
Uh-huh.
And I said, are you sure? Yeah, 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 yeah. And I thought, no, you don't. Uh, and but she put that poor girl through worse than you'd put a dog.
Really?
Yeah. Because I'm the one that she gave me 2 weeks to get her and Sheila Shepherd trained, and of course Sheila was a welder there in Mobile, Alabama, at the port, and it after about a year she ended up going back to Mobile, going back to work out on the shore or on the ships,
Right.
welding. But I had 2 weeks to get them ready. Moolah did not smarten them up, and of course Moolah said, don't let them in the ring together. When Moolah was in the ring, Sheila could be in the ring, and when Leilani was in the ring, I could be in the ring, but they couldn't be in the ring together because they didn't know they could have wrestled each other,
Hmm.
but it would have been identical, and they'd have stepped back like they was in the gym and saying, "No, we did that wrong. We got to do it." And I thought, we couldn't have that happen because we was up in New York,
Right.
And then um, after we were up there, we were only in New York for like 2 weeks, but I said that was 2 weeks of having these two girls not smart, uh,
Oh,
and trying to, uh, and I guess Mula tried to break you before she made you,
yeah, yeah.
which and in one part was good because a lot of girls didn't make it in wrestling that didn't deserve to be. Uh,
Right.
but I sat there and said, Lalani hung in there, but I sat there and I said, now you hear her. And I said, I heard her just like I heard Judy Martin do an interview whenever it first started coming out and uh, ranting and raving. And I sat there and said, Lalani was throwing the F bomb left and right.
Hmm.
Uh, and I thought, you hate her if you want to hate her or dislike her, whatever you want it to be. And I sat there and said, I will tell Lalani to this day, I respected Lillian. I didn't like her,
Right.
you know, and I sat there and said, but when you needed, if you wouldn't have went through Moolah, you'd have never made it in wrestling because there was no place else to go to. Because if you wasn't a Moolah girl, you wasn't going to wrestle in the States.
Right.
Now Rhonda Singh made her name known because of being trained by Mildred Burke and going to Japan and Mexico and staying there so much. And then me
Mhm.
and her starting to wrestle in Puerto Rico and going to these other countries, India and all that. That we started getting known for being two big girls
Right.
uh, that were independent. Uh, because Mildred, after she sat there and I guess Rhonda was with her about 5 years and sat there and said, well, there's no sense in staying with me. You can book yourself because when you want to go home to
Right.
Canada, uh, you can, you got the numbers to the promotions and all that. You can do your own. So Mildred didn't try to hang on to you, like Moolah did, you know.
And Mildred
But
didn't take your money either.
no,
No.
yeah, you paid her for training, and then she'd get you booked, and
Hmm.
you'd go about your merry way, But I sat there and said, one of the things that Mildred did, she trained men and women, and she advertised training for men and women. And of course, Moolah would always say, "I'd never train a man." That's just disrespectful.
How is that
Well,
disrespectful? What
it
was her
was. I
reason
mean,
for that?
the men were challenging us, and they got more bookings than we got. Well, if Moolah would have booked us the way she could have booked us, everybody would have made money. But I sat there
Right.
and said, from April till November, about mid-November, we were there to entertain Moolah. We'd
Hmm.
get a few shots here and there, in Georgia or North Carolina, but we didn't go on any major long trips, you know.
Hmm.
But we were there to entertain Moolah.
Do you
We did.
think that Mula held the women back for years, like everybody says? Everybody says that if Mula had handled things differently, the women's revolution would have happened a lot sooner. That she held back a lot of people for a lot of wrong reasons and kept them like kind of like in a bubble in a circle and wanted everything for herself. But do you think that if she was a little bit more lenient in one way but aggressive in another way to promote the girls, to help them, to move them like Mildred might have done, do you think the women's revolution would have happened a lot sooner and it would have been a lot more um impactful?
Oh yeah, definitely. And Vince Senior actually in '73, the beginning of '73, wanted Moolah to drop her belt to me because
Right.
I was such I was making such an impact doing everything that I did and not letting anybody tell me, because Moolah sat there and said wearing red, white, and blue was never going to get over. Well, I sit there and said if you shove it down their throat, they're going to get used to it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Look at it now. It's all over the place.
Oh yeah,
I remember you wrestling in the red, white, and blue. I loved it. I really did. And when I was, and I say I was young, I'm not that much younger than you, but um, I loved watching you wrestle. And anybody who's never seen Susan Green wrestle, do yourself a favor, go on YouTube, look up Susan Green's matches. This woman is phenomenal. And not only was she phenomenal, she's still phenomenal because she still is training. Am I correct?
You're very correct. Yeah.
Tell
Uh,
us about what you're doing right now with the training.
I got two guys that just starting, and they're learning to fall. And I said the biggest deal is I don't want you bouncing your head around the mat. And I sit there and said, if I see that your head starts bouncing, then it's called a day. It's over. And then we start going into the holes and learning how to reverse all the holes, and that these holes have. I know the old school names for the top wrist lock and the step over toe hold and the head scissors, and they start telling me the Hurricane Karana and all this stuff. It's like, oh my God, show me what it is. No.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, they changed. They took a lot of those old moves and just gave them new names. That's what
oh
like
yeah.
Hurricane Rana is only like a kick up in the ropes or whatever.
Yeah.
But if may I tell everybody your age?
Yeah, I'm very proud of my age.
You should be.
72.
You're 72, correct?
That's correct.
This woman at
Uh,
72 years old, not only, okay, is she still extremely active, she trains in her own wrestling ring. She helps people still get bookings. She is an icon that will always be an icon that always was an icon. You got to understand Susan Green is top dog when it comes to what she does and what she did. And I can say that because in all the years I've been involved in wrestling, I've seen a lot of what she's talking about. Okay. And I never knew Susan when I was younger, never, but I loved watching her. She was incredible. And you had such a performance. You had such a look about you. You had I don't know. I don't even know what to call it. Like you had this thing about you that was like, come at me, and I will kill you. It was like that kind of thing. And man, I'll tell you, it was good. And I'm telling you, it was amazing. You did some good stuff. But
thank
Well, I have a question. So
Okay.
and I'm going to apologize in advance, Susan, if this is like a really stupid statement. But it's the only way I know how to describe it.
Okay.
I want to love women's wrestling. And there are some amazing women wrestlers out there. But I can't stand watching women that don't, and this is the part, again, I apologize, but I don't know how any other way to explain it, that don't wrestle like the men do.
True.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. But if a girl goes in there and she's not, if she's, but really going out there and wrestling and hitting and kicking and throwing and taking it and, all that kind of stuff, that's what I want to see. I don't want to see this like,
Yeah.
and
the
I just can't watch it. It just infuriates me.
Oh, that's why the promoters liked back in the early 70s, whenever Paula Kay, and now Paula Kay was only around about 2.5 years, but they liked Moolah booked me a lot with her for those 2.5 years because Paula and I worked more like the men. We went hole for hole and we'd throw punches like the men threw punches. And
Exactly.
and if we busted a lip, oh well, it happens.
Yeah, it happens, right?
If and today, there's not that many. I guess Rhea Ripley has more of the look.
She does.
That would have. I would sit there and want to give her a pat on the back for being able to do what she does. I liked it when she wore the long pants instead of getting in these bottoms that kind of show more than I would want to show.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They all do that now.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But she's also a a pusher for women's rights
Yeah.
and for women. So she's good like that. She
Oh
wants
yeah.
everybody to, to get their just due. In other words, like she wants
Yeah.
women to push. They had a thing where somebody offered her, and I don't know exactly who it was, but somebody offered her like $50 million to do something, some soda, I think it was, for
Yeah.
their stuff. And she said to them, she goes, you know what? I don't need all that money. She said, how about if I do it and we take the rest of that money and give it to homeless and to people that are starving? And now, see, that is something to be commended, because nobody
Oh yeah.
does that anymore.
Oh,
Nobody
oh
cares. Nobody
no, yeah.
cares anymore if you're starving.
It,
Nobody cares.
oh yeah. It's putting money in their pocket um but with today's working with WWE especially, you have to sit there and figure that when are they going to cut you? You know,
Exactly.
when is my gimmick or my going to be over? You know.
And it
Um,
will be. It will be
oh
for
yeah.
everybody. That's the thing. You go into the WWE with the anticipation that you are going to leave too. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's already given.
Yeah.
And
Hold your
that's
breath.
sad.
Get 3 months. You know.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, work your butt off. Like they just had a thing with Corey Graves. He's out apparently now again,
Yeah.
and they do it last minute. It's like, all right, you're done. You're out. Goodbye. No, we're never going to
Yeah.
see you again, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was horrible.
Oh,
How was your time in the WWF? Did you enjoy working there?
I enjoyed working there for senior now, and probably I made more money than what Moolah said.
Mm-hmm.
But when I normally would come home after a week, and I would have $700 or $800 in my pocket after she got her 30%. So, and that was paying the motel and eating and everything, that I was able to pocket that much money.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but senior was really good, uh, and the promoters that ran the other towns that he promoted, and the WWF was good. Whenever, of course, I never was there with Junior. They did call me and was talking about, and it was before actually Joni had come here, because Kowalski had called, and then whenever she got down here, I said, "You're ready for the ring," and I sent her over to work in Holland for. But I also told the promoter, I sat there and said, "You have to understand." She sent letters and VHSs to
Oh
show
yeah,
Pat,
yeah.
that for WWF, and she might get called, and she's got 72 hours. If she gets that call, that she has to be back to Connecticut. Well, she ended up making, I think, 24 days, and the last 4 or 5 days was going to be sightseeing. And
Mm-hmm.
she got the call from WWF, but they'd call me, and I'd sit there and told Pat Patterson, I said, I'd be more than happy to come up there, but I'm not going to wrestle. I'm going to wrestle like I did for Vince Sr. in a one-piece bathing suit. And I sit there and said, the first time somebody goes for the strap of my bathing suit, it'll be the last time they go for a strap of anybody's bathing suit.
There you go.
And I'll get as big as I can get naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, it was whenever they was doing the lingerie fighting and all that, and I thought, well, that's not for me, So, but Pat had sat there and said, thank you very much for being honest, because I said that's when they was pulling the tops down, and Sable was sitting there calling her breasts the puppies and had the handprints on her
Oh yeah,
suit.
that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I sat there and said, then, well, I guess I got called twice, because whenever they called, and I'd sent China, or I'd sent Joni, which was China, and they
Mm-hmm.
developed, because I'd sit there and told Joni, I sat there and said, they're probably going to try to get you on the juice. No, 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 I do natural, and I sit there and said, I bet you get on the juice. And I said, but just say no, you know. But Joni was a yes person, It was like
Yeah.
that, and of course Triple H would sit there and they'd be working out, and he'd show how big he was before they started to work out, and then the next day they'd take measurements, and he'd take a dang shot, or 2 days later he'd take the shot and then work out, and how much bigger his arms had got or his legs had got, whatever the case may be. And that's what got Joni into using the stuff, because she was going to be the eighth wonder of the world, and which Joni and I could have went as twins if she wouldn't have had that northern
Yeah.
accent. or not twins, sisters.
Yeah.
Uh, but we were she was a little shorter than me. And of course, I said, you got to look at the boots that she had. They had 2 or 3 inches of soles on the bottom.
Oh, yeah, they
And
did. Yes, they did.
they shot up at an angle. So it made her look taller than she was, you know, and I guess right before everything happened to her, I sat there and said, she wished she would have listened. And I thought, well, yeah,
Yeah,
it is what it is.
she really got screwed big time. She did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I believe in my heart that all that screwing around and all that mistreatment, especially what Triple H did to her, led to her death. That's
Oh
how
yeah.
I feel,
Oh yeah.
And people, they try to poo-poo that, and none of that happened, but it's a fact that they were living together, and he was going out with Stephanie while they were still together. That's enough to break you down right there.
Oh
you
yeah.
know
And
and
whenever I was working with her and she came down here, she didn't have any. I mean, I talked to her extensively about going over to Holland and then doing things and how it was going to be, and promoters. And today, that they would be trying to take advantage of her. And I sit there and said, you stick to your guns and believe in what you believe.
exactly.
But you get somebody like Triple H, and he's gotten pull with the owner and all that, and it's like, we do this, we're gonna we're gonna go places. Well, and then gives an engagement ring, and they get the condo together, and you think you're going places, and the next thing you know, you're out the door because he's going with the princess.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And and it doesn't look like, to me anyway, it doesn't look like there was 1 ounce of remorse, not from him and not from Stephanie. Not
Oh,
one
no.
ounce of remorse, not one. And it broke my heart for China, for Laurie, and it really did break my heart, because she
Yeah.
was, or Joni
Oh,
rather. What am I calling her Laurie for? Joni.
yeah.
But she was a good person. She really
yeah.
was, and she was like in my mind, she was like a little kid starting out. You know what I mean? She walked into this, she believed everybody, she thought people were going to really try to help her. And you're probably the only one who ever really was honest with her and really tried to help her,
Oh, yeah.
and everybody else just knocked her down and knocked her further and further and further down until she couldn't do it anymore. And that breaks my heart.
They used her for what they could get, and then throw her away like a piece of garbage.
Yeah. See, people don't get that. People only look at what they see on TV, which is fine. I get that. But they don't understand how ruthless and how nasty and how evil these sports can be. Okay.
Oh,
And it's only about what they want. It's what they want. End of story. If you fit into that bill, you're fine. If you don't fit into that bill, you're out, which is just like you said. When you go to the WWE, you go in there with the mindset that you're there, but you are going to leave.
Yeah.
Nobody stays there forever, period.
No.
So tell us about what are you doing now besides training and all that? What are you doing now? You still go to parties, like you sent me pictures how you dressed up for parties. Tell us about that. I think that was so cool.
I was in a contest because of my personal life that they called a Cinderfella, which meant you went dressed out as much like a female as you get. And of course, you saw the picture of me.
Yeah.
I looked more like I was at somebody in drag than I looked like a female. But
they pictures were amazing. They were so good.
And then you had an hour to come out from being a girl to perform a lip sync a song of anything in it, but you had to be the look like a male. And of course, I sent you the picture where I had the mustache and the goatee. And
that was so cool.
Yeah, and now I was actually crowned back in 2003 as, and I ran and did other shows when I was overseas. It ain't like I just started doing this, and they call it I say male impersonation.
Right.
Today they sit there and they like to call it the drag king, because you think of the queens,
right?
All. So it's the same thing. But in 2003, after getting some of the people behind, well, Miss Hancock, she's the one that started uh, Gay Pride for South Carolina. I guess it's been 35 years ago now.
Hmm.
Uh, and but I'd sit there and said, why can't I perform? And everybody that was in charge of Pride, or they sit there and said, well, nobody wants to do that but you. And I said, you'd be surprised how many females want to go out and be male impersonation. Well, you had to they had a contest that the whole state of South Carolina, the clubs um, had their people that performed, the females that came out being male impersonators.
Hmm.
And I competed against 12 other females back in 2003 and was crowned the South Carolina's first gay pride king. Uh,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That is amazing. And you
That
know what?
is.
I can see you doing that. I can see you doing I can see you doing anything. With all
yeah.
the history you have behind you, I can see you doing anything that you put your mind to. And you know what? You should be very proud
Well,
of everything you've done and everything you do.
now a lot of times when I perform, and I sit there and said that I kind of hate it because Alan Jackson didn't perform anymore. But I sit there and said people would see me, and they'd sit there and say, "Well, when are you going to do Alan Jackson?" And I sit there and I thought, well, I hadn't thought about it, but I said I went back and started doing his songs, and now I mainly perform Alan Jackson songs. And I sit there and said, I since his sickness and all that, and he's not able to perform anymore. I said that hopefully he does cut more records, or they release new records that he
Ah,
recorded. Uh,
yeah.
but I sit there and said everybody that sees me, when they see me come out with my hat and Western clothes, jeans and jackets and everything, and I got some jackets that look like what he's wore on stage and all.
Right.
And of course my hats, I got the gray ones and the white ones and brown, just like he wore, the Stetsons and
Wow.
all that. And everyone starts sitting there and calling me Alan. And I sit there and said, and I've actually had uh, some people sit there and said that I could pass, if he ever saw me. And I thought, I'm not, I'm okay, but I'm not that good, to sit there and say I can make myself up. Now, if I had a makeup artist, I could probably make they could make me up look more like Alan than myself. But I sit there and said, it does. I do give myself a pat on the back whenever I'm able to do his songs, and
That's
and
wonderful. You have to send us more pictures so we can put them up the next time you come on. But I
okay,
think that's amazing, and you're a tribute to Alan Jackson. I think that's wonderful, and
yeah,
he should find out about it. He should know, that
yeah,
you're doing it. Maybe he'd want to meet you and
well,
help you
that'd be
do
great.
that. That
Yeah,
would be great. Maybe we'll send him a letter. How's that?
okay, all right,
All right. I want to ask you another question, a wrestling related question.
okay.
Um, if the WWE were to contact you about being in the Hall of Fame, would you do it?
I would have to tell them that I never worked for WWF, but if they would acknowledge WWF, I would seriously think about it.
Well, I think that it would be a really, 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 really good thing on their part for them to have you in their Hall of Fame because you have a legacy that's unbelievable. You have an amazing legacy and you've done incredible things. I mean, look at the people that you got the Moolah who wound up, pushing herself forward as such a wonderful person. And now she's not even there anymore. They took everything away from her,
Yeah,
and rightly so. She
yeah,
tortured enough people for that. But then you have
yeah.
people like, China, and you have people like Lalani Kai. Lalani Kai was in the WWF as well, right? Or is that
Oh
just
yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay. Well,
He
they
was,
put her in the Hall of Fame.
yeah,
Yeah, but she
Um
was also in the WWF. I
yeah,
well,
remember
yeah,
her in
yeah,
the WWF.
yeah,
So
that's true.
yeah, in the
But
80s.
yeah,
yeah,
I think it would be a mistake on their part not to put you in it because you have, again, like I said, you have an incredible amount of input with what you've done and what you've helped people get through in all these years. So now let me ask you a question. In your training that you do now, have you trained anybody that we would know today or that we would know for over the years?
one of the guys that I trained that's been busy the last few years, that's in WWE ID, I think it's called, Sean Legacy.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah,
Okay, I heard of him. I've heard of him. And
he's
you've trained
a small guy.
him?
I trained him.
Very
Uh,
cool. Wow. How
so
long ago was that?
uh, maybe 5 years. But now he's one of the
Wow.
ones that I told him. I said, now Shawn, in his real name, he wished it was spelled like Shawn Michaels. Uh, but
SHAWN?
right, but his is SCAN.
SEAN,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, and he did come up with the name Legacy. And I said, you need to think about whenever you go out there. I said, like, I crammed red, white, and blue down everybody's throat for so long. I sit there and said, now when they see me, I said, not only did I wear it in uh, the ring, but when I went into the arena, I was wearing red, white, and blue.
Right,
Some way,
right.
somehow. And I sit there and I said, my Tony Lama boots, I had them made. My first pair that I ended up wearing until they was getting close to being wore out, and I got another pair, but I turned them into my wrestling boots.
Mm-hmm.
But the first Western boots that I had wore that were red, white, and blue. But I sit there and said, you know, Shawn, get a color that or make your jacket. I said nobody wear. I said it could be a vest, but make your gear look to where people wonder what you're wearing.
Right.
And he spent a lot of money in getting his gear together, and his he wears kick pads, but they match his tights or his trunks, and they match his vest. And uh, when he went out there for the $25, and he went out there for the pat on the back and the thank you very much, and he went to Phoenix, Arizona for driving. He not no flying. He drove himself out there and basically cost him more than he made, but he went to Japan, and not for New Japan or All Japan. For the lesser and not
Mm-hmm.
promotions, and he's been to. And of course, when he went to Ireland, I sat there and said, hang on to your seat and be ready to fly, because you're not going to be touching ground till you get back to Augusta. And
Wow.
but I said, you're going to be going 2 a days and hitting a train and sleeping on the train and hoping that you get to lay down in the dressing room for a minute or two, because you're not going to know your feet are touching the ground till you get back to Augusta.
Wow,
And
that's crazy.
he's done the Japan. He's done uh, quite a few overseas uh, trips, and where overseas he was making a little bit of money, but here in the States, until he started doing some stuff. And of course, he still works the independents because WWE says he can. But if they call him and says he has to be somewhere, then he might have to cancel a show that he's got set up with the independents.
Right,
But
right.
so far, WWE has been nice to him, but uh, they sent him the sweat suit where the black eye top and bottom where it has WWE ID, I think. But you got to
Right.
wear that whenever you're going through airports and everything. So he's got his dress code whenever he works with WWE, that he's in the airports. He's got to dress by,
Wow.
and whenever he
So many
goes out,
rules.
oh yeah, whenever he
Wow.
goes out, he's got his own gear, and they didn't let him keep his name. They did not try to change his name. And I sat there and said that was very unusual.
Yeah, that
You
is
know,
unusual. Very unusual. That's crazy. They seem to have a lot of rules and regulations and stuff like that that they didn't have years ago. It wasn't like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But that's a little bit crazy. And let me ask you, out of all the countries and federations and states that you have wrestled in throughout your career, where would you say was your best experience, or where did you like wrestling the most?
Uh, as crazy as it is, because we didn't have interstate back then in the
Mm-hmm.
70s. We went 2-lane roads uh, for Leroy McGurk in the Tulsa, Oklahoma territory. Long ass trips. And you had the upper territory and the lower territory, which Oklahoma and part of Mississippi. And then when you went lower, it was Louisiana and all. But I sat there and said, long trips. And if you weren't there for at least 3 weeks, it meant that you was going to have Tulsa, Shreveport, which 500 miles or better,
Oh
one
my
way, 2-lane
God.
road. And then you might get New Orleans if you was in Baton Rouge, and uh, then you was back up into Oklahoma City, to where you was just zigzagging over and into Alabama and Mississippi. And I sit there and said, uh, but I guess I liked it because Danny Hodge was there, and he taught me a lot of shoot holes. Yeah. He taught me how to fight. Uh,
Okay.
he taught me how to, and I said, and in wrestling, I was known as a wrestler, a shooter, and a hooker. Um, and
Okay.
hooker don't mean I was walking the streets.
What did
Uh,
hooker mean? Explain that. What did hooker mean?
you get a hold, whether it was a arm bar or a leg, and you hook it.
You hook
And the
it and
more
that's it. And it's
and the
not going
more
away.
the more they wiggle, the worse it hurts. It don't look like I'm doing nothing.
Yep.
Or whoever's got the hook on you, it's considered like when you're fishing. When you hook that fish, if you hook it right, it can't get off.
Right.
Well, in wrestling, if you get them hooked right, the more they wiggle, the worse it hurts. You know,
That's true. That is very true.
you know,
Wow. So you were a
and
hooker.
I was known and in I guess 2023, one of the promoters sat there and said, "Will you please tell him you're going to work?" And I thought, "What are you talking?" He said, "This poor girl scared the crap out of you, or she's petrified of you." And I thought, "For what?" And said, "Everybody's told him what a badass you are." And I thought, "Well, that's only if you piss me off."
There you go. There you go. My words exactly. There you
You
go.
know,
Don't piss Susan Green off.
you know.
Now, Susan, do you watch any wrestling of like today's wrestling? Do you watch AEW or WWE or
You know the ones
TNA Impact? Whatever?
I the ones believe it or not, I watch more of WOW, Women of
Oh,
Wrestling.
okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, well, the two twins, or the twins, the dark
Okay.
black-headed one, the Miami Sweet Heat. Uh, I've actually talked to them and worked out with them some, and they want to fly me down and pay me to work out with them for a week in Miami.
Wow. That's wonderful.
So
That is
they know me,
awesome.
and they know that I'm the real deal. Uh, uh,
But
one of me.
how would you compare WOW wow to GLOW to glow? How would you compare those two?
Uh, Glow was more entertainment. They did know how to wrestle and they didn't have, but their ropes, they didn't use the ropes were like rubber bands at Glow,
Right.
where in WOW, they can spring off the ropes and they can get on the top rope and dive off and a lot. In Glow, you mainly use the turnbuckles for doing anything if you was using the rope because the
Right.
ropes were so loose. They weren't loose, but they was like rubber bands. They stretched so much.
Right. Right. Okay.
Where the women of wrestling, their ring is more of today's category of wrestling to where they're able to do, and uh, they also do more wrestling than WWE or TNA or I mean, there some of the girls do, and wow, they do some flips and that, but they rely, and I shouldn't say they do the flips, they do the high splashes off the damn top ropes and stuff.
Hmm. Okay.
But you you don't have to be because uh, Sweet Heat, they're so tall they can't do all that flipping.
Yeah.
They just they got the height and all. Uh, and until I pointed out that they were twins to some people, I sit there and said, because one of them, I said, but uh, one of them's blonde headed, the other one's black headed. And I sit there and said, well, if you look, you can sit there and say they are twins, but they're not identical,
Right.
but
Right.
they do the pink and black, and it's just opposite on their suits and everything from what
Right.
they're. So I sit there and said, that they spend a lot on their gear. And of course, I know WWE and all the others are spending a lot of money on their gear.
Oh my
Uh,
God. Must be crazy.
yeah, but I said where WoW, um, their promotion is not budgeting, to get their gear and everything. And of course, I
Yeah.
know Vince normally gets it for whatever the first time or the first couple of times for you, and then it's up to you to keep that look up.
Yeah.
Uh, but I sit there and said, these girls are putting the money out to look the way they look,
Right.
uh,
Right. So that's their
and
own money that they're putting out.
yeah,
So
and
WoW is more wrestling, where Glow is more entertainment. It's more
yeah,
flashy, let's say.
yeah,
Now, do you know a person named Patricia Summerland? She was from Glow. Have you ever
yes,
met her?
Yes.
Okay, she's going to be our guest next week.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were able to get her to come on. I believe it's next Thursday. I'm going to
Okay.
ask her some stuff about Glow versus WoW and all that other stuff. But anyway, I wanted to just go back to you and ask you if somewhere down the road, I know you have a lot more to tell. If somewhere down the road you'd be willing to come back again.
Definitely. I'll be willing to talk in as many times as you want to talk because I got stories.
Well, that's what we want. That's what we want, just stories. And I got to tell you, every time, well, this is the second time you've been on now. And the first time you were on, I was very excited because of all the years that I watched you and how much I thought of you and everything else. But then the first episode that you were on, you made me feel like, wow, like you made me feel like, what a girl, what a lady. And I finally got to know the person that I always liked, admired in the ring. And then when you came back on again tonight, I was extremely excited. I was looking forward to this a lot because you are you are an icon. You are an amazing woman, and you have a lot going for you. You have a lot behind you. In my opinion, you have been one of the trailblazers for the women of wrestling. Okay. And I'm telling you that you are incredible. And I'm telling the fans here to please go to YouTube, type in Susan Green. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. This lady could rock a show. Let me tell you, she can. I bet you right now you could still do it. And here I am, younger than you, and I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that. And here you are at 72 years old, still teaching men how to wrestle. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. God bless you. That is amazing.
Thank you.
That really
I
is.
like to tell them that I still walk the walk.
You do, and you talk the talk. And you know what? Let me tell you something. They say don't talk the talk if you can't walk the walk. And you
There
do.
you go.
Yep, you do it, and you talk the talk, and you walk the walk. But I'm going to say we're going to close the show now because we don't want to use up too many of your stories. We want you to come back again because people like to see you. They like to see you. We've had good reception from you, and we want to keep you in our company. One of these days, maybe Jeannie and I will get on a trip, and we'll come down and meet you. I would love to meet you.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Never had the honor, never had the privilege, but we would love to meet you and, just sit and have a cup of coffee or something and just reminisce about some stuff because you are an incredible woman, Susan. You are an incredible name. You are an incredible everything. Like you are an incredible example. Let's use that word for the women of today.
I try to tell people if it wasn't for people like y'all and all the other fans that wanted to see me and put my name out there, I wouldn't be who I am. I'm just.
And you know what? It's good that you see that because a lot of wrestlers don't see that. And it's funny because a lot of times when I first wanted to have you on the show, okay, I'm like, Susan Green. Do you remember Susan Green? Do you remember Susan? She had the cowgirl hat and the vest. And a lot of people didn't know who you were at the time.
Yeah.
But now people know who you are. Okay.
Yep.
And I think that's really important because to me, you laid out such a road, such a fire-filled road for the future. And I have to commend you for that. God bless you. And I want you to know that we just think you're amazing. And it's always an honor to have you on the show. It's an honor to know you. And I have nothing but praise and admiration for you.
Thank you. It's an honor being able to be on y'all's podcast.
Thank you. Anytime. You're welcome here anytime. And I will be bothering you again in a few months. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
In the meantime, we're going to keep in touch though. Okay.
You bet. Okay.
All right. Susan, thank you so much.
Thanks again, Susan.
God bless you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Love y'all. Okay. Love you, girl.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Wow, isn't she amazing? She is amazing. I could listen to her talk for hours.
Oh my God. Yeah. Me too.
I know I could listen to her forever. And
forever.
She does have some incredible matches.
She's so intelligent, and just 72 years old and still training male wrestlers.
Exactly. Unbelievable. Yep. 72. Yeah. And she's still doing it. And WoW wants to hire her to go down to Florida for a week and train them. She's 72. Yeah. I mean, this is unreal. Unbelievable. This woman is a saint. I'm telling you right now, she's unbelievable. So we're going to go. We're going to go now because we have a lot of stuff coming up. Sunday, we have a recap. with Johnny Hotbody. We're going to do that on
Yes.
Sunday. Next week, we have Patricia Summerland. She's going to be on Thursday. She's a woman of glow. And then next Sunday, we're going to have another recap, I hope, God
Yeah.
willing.
Yeah.
So
and now, I don't know, the WWE pay-per-view is tomorrow morning,
at 8
which
o'clock.
I'm
yeah.
not getting. So
No, I can't get it either.
I
so.
can't. I'm not going to watch it. And then AEW's pay-per-view, that's next Saturday.
I think it's next. Wait a minute.
Saturday,
No, I
Sunday.
think it's this Sunday. This Sunday? I'm not
Is it
sure.
this Sunday? I don't.
It's
I don't
this
know. I
Sunday or
didn't write
next
it.
Sunday. Yeah, but I'm
I
not
think
getting
it's
that either.
next.
So
I don't think
yeah,
it's this weekend.
next week. I'm not getting that either. So we're going to focus on Dynamite and Collision, and then take it from there. Because I have found with AEW, Dynamite and Collision are the two things you watch if you want to lead up to a pay-per-view, and they're also the two things you want to watch if you want to get all the results of a pay-per-view. And it's kind of like they actually relive a lot of that stuff, which I like. WWE doesn't do that really. When they have their pay-per-views, there's a build-up and there's an afterglow. Yeah, there definitely is. But in the AEW, the build-up is almost like watching the pay-per-view. And then the afterwards is almost like watching the pay-per-view again. So it's crazy. But
I think AEW does a better job at building it up.
they do. They do.
Where WWE, they used to. But now when there's a pay-per-view like every month, it's like, how much can you do?
You can't build
it
up.
seemed to be better when, it was just WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor.
Right. Exactly.
And
now that
like
they have
3 or 4,
two nights,
and it's like,
yeah, and now that they have 2 nights for some of them, that's a little bit crazy too. But like you said, they're so close together. There's no time for the build up and the recap. Because when it's time for the recap, you got to build up the next one.
You're already
what I'm saying?
moving. Yeah, they've already.
Exactly. You're already moving on. Yeah. So
yeah.
we'll
So
see what
AEW, but
happens.
AEW runs every month, right?
Yes, pretty much.
Pay-per-view?
But it's not every single month. I think their bigger ones are a little farther off, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
they're getting really good. I mean, I am really impressed with them a lot. But we're going to say goodnight, okay?
Yes.
And we're going to have a nice long weekend. I hope everybody else has a nice long weekend.
I don't have a nice long weekend.
Oh, well, we got out of work early today. I was so excited, 2 hours early. So that's a nice long weekend for me. But
and you're off on Monday?
Yeah, I'm off on
It's
Monday.
a holiday.
So
yeah,
excited.
we don't get off for.
No, I'm sorry.
It is. I don't even know.
I'm
what
sorry.
it
I'll
is.
call you and say hi. Okay, and keep in touch with us. Like I said, if any of the fans want to come on the show, you're welcome to come on. We want to hear what you have to say. And we're getting, like I said, we're going to be doing some tribute shows. We're going to be getting some more wrestlers. We're going to be getting some, as I call them, repeat offenders coming back on to extend their story. And it's very exciting. I love doing this podcast. I know, Jeannie, you do as well.
Yes.
And it's just something special that takes us away from the hustle and bustle and the crazy
of real life.
Of real life, yeah. So we like to just play around, and not have this real life going on for an hour and a half. But anyway, see you on Sunday, Jeannie. Have a great weekend.
Yes,
I love you.
Thank you. You too. I love you.
Okay, take care. Have a nice weekend. Bye, everybody.